I'll get us started. All right, and we're back. And we've just been chatting briefly about the Christmas holiday. And Adrian, I understand you woke up kind of early. Did you wake up before your kids or your Alexander and right?
Yeah, they slept in. They stayed up pretty late on Christmas Eve, and so he was pretty bushed, and he didn't wake up until almost 10 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, he
So yeah,
was tired.
I got up early and wrote for a couple hours before anyone else even woke up.
That's great. Yeah, I did not write on Christmas, and it really took me a little bit. I got a little bit of work done today, but not much. I've just kind of reevaled what my daily word count is for right now. It's just I'm shooting for something around 1,000. Um, but I mean, it being the holiday season and Christmas in particular, it made me think some about those interfaces between religion and art, or religion and writing, or spiritual practices, and those spiritual practices that have been beneficial to your writing. And I felt like this would be a good time for us to talk about that. So this isn't necessarily like a spiritual conversation, but I am coming at this conversation from the standpoint of like I guess a Protestant Christian. I don't think about myself as a Christian writer. I'm not, nothing that I've written to date or that's published is like quotably Christian. But yeah, but I do think there's ways that my faith and my spirituality impact my perspective on art, and so I just want to have a conversation about that. It would be helpful. Um,
Sounds good.
what would you say? I'm curious because we've had a lot of spiritual conversations ourselves, but just for like the sake of people tuning in, like where would you place yourself on the spiritual journey thing? I mean, like I'm I'm uncomfortable with the label Christian, but I'll use it because I do believe in Jesus, but like I mean, where are you on your thing?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I could probably come up with something, but it would sound pretty pretentious. So I'm not really sure.
Well, that's good. No, I respect that too. Sometimes these labels are more divisive than anything. But I mean, the reason I was thinking about it is because I do think it's interesting, like the story, the Christmas story, um, of this idea of um, God no longer just being some kind of abstract thing, or some spiritual being that, we have limited access to. God like somehow manifesting or incarnating in the form of a human being, in the form of a child, let's say, and just what a strange story that is. I think I don't, there's not a lot of other stories that are quite like it in my thinking or my understanding about um, historic, like ancient writings and stuff like that. I can think of a few other stories that are similar to that, like maybe Osiris, there's that dying and rising God kind of thing. But it's a unique story, and it's a story that like I hold as true, or that it's saying something very true about our lives and my own work as a writer. And so I don't know. I think that one of the big takeaways for me, and one of the ways that I keep kind of coming back to it, and you'll see this even in like Hollywood blockbusters, is this idea of like the redemption story, and it's baked into the hero's journey that there's going to be something that the hero will go and they'll experience redemption in some way, shape, or form. Oftentimes in the hero's journey, it's like some kind of reconciliation with the father, right? The father figure is this kind of misty figure, and somehow or other those two, the hero and the father, are reconciled. Um, and I think so. To me personally, I don't take the hero's journey as just like a story. Like I think it's something that we can all step into. And so for me, the Christmas story is I guess I'm not a good postmodernist. Like I do think that there's truths in these meta narratives that we can step into. I'm not, I've kind of checked my cynicism about meta narratives at the door, and I'm curious what parts are helpful and what parts are hurtful. Um, so I am curious, like that's kind of just, I guess, kind of setting the playing field up. Um, have there been spiritual practices that have been helpful for you in your writing, or what types of things do you find yourself doing that are useful for generating art?
Um, well, offhand, like I will like invoke the muse. Um, I'll create kind of like a moment of silence, like a kind of setting intention and clearing everything else away. A kind of oh, there's a term for it. Like the kind of like acknowledging a shift from profane to sacred space, you
Hmm.
know? Um, when I'm getting started. And then throughout a project, I'll check in quite a bit, just to kind of like try to keep my finger on the pulse of like, what am I talking about? Like, what am I saying about the, like, what are the metaphysics of what I'm saying, you know? I mean, not like the way that a philosopher would. Like, I'm not really thinking in terms of like metaphysics kind of proper as a study, but just what does my story and the way that I'm telling my story and the kind of things that happen to people in my stories, the world that I create, um, what does it imply? You know?
That's really good. Yeah, just as you were talking, I was thinking about that kind of liturgy of that's a fancy term, but like of making that turn from a profane way of thinking to a more spiritual way of thinking. I sometimes thinking about like stepping into the like the astral plane or something like that, some other spiritual realm. And so when I'm imagining the narrative that I'm working on, I'm not just, it's not just imagination. I'm actually there is something being actualized. Like there is some um I think about the Mormons and the idea of the telestial and the celestial, like that there's these as above, so below. There's some sort of resonance between what I'm creating, what I'm thinking up, and maybe actual things. I don't know. Um, Similarly, like my writing space, I'm not going to show you on the camera, but it's got certain things about it. And probably most notably is this painting by my friend Steve Stones, who is himself a really fun and wonderful atheist, but um, I keep that painting on my desk as a memento mori, like this idea of like, remember, you are ashes or you are dust, and to dust you will return. Um, and
I actually have one of those too. I have one of those too.
good. Yeah, and it's just kind of always staring me in the face. And one thing that I thought about this. I've been thinking about this verse some recently because it's such a badass Bible verse. Like it's the kind of thing that like I bet there's a lot of people that read past it and they don't realize how crazy this verse is. But it's Ephesians 3:4, and it says, "When you read this, you can perceive my insight into the mystery of Christ." It's like that's a pretty high bar for writing, like that my writing could help someone perceive insights into mysteries of any nature whatsoever. But I like that. I like those types of like authoritative turns in fiction, and in narrative when the writer kind of seizes and says, when you read this, you can perceive this depth. And I would hope that even as I'm writing thrillers, that there is something there that has some depth to it. Um, yeah. For me, a big part of kind of why I was thinking about the spiritual stuff. It's really become more and more clear to me that this idea of like taking a Sabbath, like making that a practice to practice like um rest and letting go of things. Um it's very difficult, but I think it's been a very important writing practice for me to like have a day where I'm saying I'm gonna rest. Uh and I honestly think that's
Yeah, it's
part
kind
of
of like, I was just gonna say it's kind of like that, like not writing that day. It's kind of like fasting.
mm,
It's like having a regular fast. And when you fast, like when you don't eat for a day or for half a day or however long, you're hungry, and then you have kind of like an object of meditation with you all the time because it's that like hunger that you're feeling, you know? And so the abstaining for a day from writing, the itch is still there, and the meditation is on focused towards that.
mm, yeah, I think that's a good practical
Figure that out
approach
for
to it.
himself. But
Yeah, I really try to almost disentangle myself from it entirely as much as I can and just kind of almost like create this breathing space, where like I'm not thinking about it at all.
mm,
And it's like my attention is elsewhere. Like my attention is on something else. The uh, the only other one I really kind of wanted to share, I've got like I keep thinking about Bible verses that I think are actually really good writing guidelines. And I can think of sayings from other traditions, like particularly the Tao Te Ching, that have been helpful to me as a writer. But this Bible verse, when I read it, it became this kind of like huge thing. And it's something that I continue to do. It's from the book of Matthew, and it's Jesus teaching the disciples about parables, and he tells them a series of parables about the kingdom of heaven, and then he basically like tells them it's kind of a parable. It's kind of just explaining something. He says, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Um, and I mean, to me, there's three big takeaways in this verse, or maybe four. First off, like this idea that like I think this is a very Christian idea, but like that this isn't the final showdown. That like I'm a scribe in training. This is writer's training. Like that even if I write a masterpiece, that would still be in training, right? That I'm a beginner. It's that beginner's mind that the Buddhist thought talks about. So embracing a beginner's mind, and it says that you're to be like the master of a house, and I think that's really what the term author means to me. Is like this is an authority. This is someone who's the master of this story's house, right?
yeah,
And they welcome the reader in. They welcome in their guest, right? Their guest with both things that are new, like novel. The term novel literally means new, and things that are old, like the hero's journey. And so I think this is a really practical approach to the writing, the spiritual aspects of the writing life, is to maintain a beginner's mind, view yourself as the master of the house, view your reader as your guest, and entertain them with things both old and new. Um, and that's been hugely helpful to me. Like when I first read that verse, I was in a really broken place. I was kind of in a blocked place, and I was in drug treatment, and I just was not a happy person. I was not a happy person at all. But I read that verse, and I really clung to that idea initially of just like maintaining the beginner's mind. Um, that was very redemptive for me. Because I had always kind of been beating myself up with like, well, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. And to do the kind of writing or the kind of stuff you want to do, you'll never be good enough. And it's like, well, yeah, it's not the point. The point is to just kind of do the training exercise, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so it's very liberating. Um, I know there's aspects of Christian thought that, maybe are less liberating or what have you. I don't know. But that to me was very encouraging. Um, so yeah, that's really all I've got for the night. Um, I have had a realization that there's going to be a huge spiritual component to this book that I'm working on right now, and um, that feels like that more than anything else has felt like stepping off the deep end, and so I feel like I'm now working on a book. Previously, I was just kind of churning out words, and I had a outline that I was following and everything. And I'm always looking for that moment when it feels like this is impossible. I don't know how to do this. Because when I hit that moment, it's like, oh, well, now you're really writing. Um, and it wasn't something I set out. When I started this book, I just thought it was a book about a child being kidnapped, you know? But in the course of writing it, I realized, no, this is a book about like someone coming to like having a crisis of faith, you know? Um, so yeah, that's been unexpected, and it's made me just kind of go back and reevaluate some of my own practices or what have you.
Well, in my experience, by the time you get to the end of the project, the things that turn out to be the most compelling are the things that you didn't see coming. They're not the
Mm,
things you planned, they're the things that just happened, you know?
mm, yeah. I know that the project that you're working on has spiritual parts to it as well. And do those feel scary to you or hairy, or are you totally comfortable writing about that stuff?
And I mean, I do it a lot, so I feel pretty comfortable with it, but my stories deal with kind of myth and um, the intersection between religion and imagination and kind of the mundane world that we live in, kind of daily, you know. Those are kind of my obsessions that I come back to over and over and over again. So
Mm,
I write about it so much that it's not really intimidating to me, but I always try to make a point of not like writing the same thing over and over. So everyone has like a new aspect of that I'm trying to like understand better. And I think that is the key thing for me is that I'm not like preaching to the reader. I'm not trying to tell the reader something that I think they should know. I'm trying to figure that thing out myself, you know.
yeah,
I'm
that's
trying
a
to discover something. I'm not really trying to like teach you something, you know.
that's a good word. I'm gonna hold on to that. That's really helpful. Um, I think for me, like I was wrapping up the MFA program when I had this religious experience and accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And it was like a really bad career move. You know what I mean? Like everyone in the writers program was like, we knew you were weird, but like we liked you better when you're ranting and raving on acid. Like the Christian thing's not a good idea. And I really do think that literature, fine art is very post-Christian. You know what I mean? People are just kind of like they don't know really what to do with you. Um, I'm not really interested in getting published with Christian publishing houses. You know, they're their own little awful thing. Um, and so yeah, I to me there is a tension. I anytime I encounter faith in characters' lives, you know what I mean, as I'm writing and I realize, oh, this person's actually got some kind of spiritual thing that they're doing. Um, anytime I come to that point in the writing, I'm a little there's a slight hesitancy for me because it's like number one, I do not want to um I do not want to pretend to have like the the answer on all this stuff. I don't. I would not want to write um things that are like that continue like the more harmful aspects of institutionalized religion. I would not want to promulgate those things or give them additional kind of agency. But at the same time, like this stuff I think is important. I still have questions about it and I still am trying to figure it out. And I know that other people are too. And, so I always feel a slight hesitancy. Um,
Something that works for me that you might think about just on a purely kind of like craft basis is the saying like um take strange things and make them seem familiar and take familiar things and make them seem strange. You know that?
yeah,
So
that's good.
kind of apply that like like a character with a prayer life, for example, just like make it weird. Um
Mm.
Weird it, weird the familiar and make the weird familiar. And
That's
I
really
that's
good.
that
Yeah.
helps for me. You'll find a kind of way to worm into it and find a finger hold where it's not derivative and it feels really authentic and it feels really right for the character and it makes the story interesting and not like Christian fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice because I feel like there's so much like Christianese and lingo that people parse out. And like as you were talking, I was thinking about earlier today, something unrelated. I was reading the lyrics to Madonna's Like a Prayer, and it actually does a really effective job of kind of of saying something about prayer, even though I know the songs are meant to be just completely blasphemous and just a pop anthem. Um, but she says some great stuff. Like she does these little pivots where like if it was Christianese, like if she was speaking in Christian lingo, how the sentence is supposed to end. And not Madonna, being a good Catholic school girl, subverts it. She keeps like subverting it and making it weird. And of course the music video is great too. But the first line to Like a Prayer is arguably one of the most iconic pop song lines ever. It's "Life is a mystery." And that's such a great opener. It's great. Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name and it feels like home. Like everything that she's saying right now, it feels very kind of Christian. Um, but the line that really stood out to me, um, it's like it's this weird little bridge after the chorus, and she says, "I hear your voice. It's like an angel sighing. I have no choice. I hear your voice. It feels like flying." All of that is just like, wow, Madonna. Like this is, I don't want to sing her praises too high, but I feel like she's given a nice roadmap for what you're talking about. Like she's making it weird. She's making it really weird. And of course the music video does an even better job of making it weird. But I think you're onto something there. I really do. So that's very encouraging and I will definitely take that to task.
Flannery O'Connor does that really well. And
Mm.
the when Flannery O'Connor writes about Christians, they're weird. Um, but you believe in them though. Like you believe that they're human beings though. They're not like parodies of a Christian. They're interesting characters. She does a good job of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about O'Connor some this morning. She's great. Just even in their choice of
Yeah,
book
she's
titles,
wonderful.
like The Violent Shall Bear It Away. Like what a great title, you know. Just
Yeah,
beautiful.
that is awesome. Everything that rises must converge.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it for tonight. Um, I'll be back. We'll be back here Thursday. Um, but yeah, man, I really appreciated all your thoughts on this. This was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
All right, good night.
Yep.